Yeah, I come from men that stand. I'm in the field and you just sit in the stands. Take that bass out your voice. If you ain't got no gun in your hand, I do what I want. And you don't even do what you can, you do what you told. I got no love for my foes. They can mimic my delivery and copy my prose. But what they can't comprehend is how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't cut from the same cloth. Can't come from the same loom. Fit in similar shapes or even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the costume. I'm teaching gifted children. You can't come in this classroom.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Yo. Welcome back to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 7. It's boy Geechee, y'all, and I'm here with Dr. Yusef, Bunchy, Shakur, all the way up there in Detroit. What's up, bro?
Not much, good brother. How you be, man?
Cooler, man. The last few days has been immaculate, beautiful weather, heat, sun.
You say immaculate,
bro. My skin getting all this sun, and I'm loving it, bro.
Yeah, I feel we got a little bit. So it was up to 55 yesterday.
I needed to stay this way, bro. This is how I rock. I needed to stay this way and don't move at all. But look, we want to welcome everybody to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Your CMB podcast right here on Black Liberation Media. We love it that y'all are in the chats. Shout out to all the people in the chat. Make sure you hit the copy button and then share it and paste it to whoever you know that needs some radical politics. One of my brothers is coming through today. My brother Mikael, he's gonna be talking about some Dapper Dan and as Yusef said, some of the aesthetics of hip hop kind of was born with Dapper Dan, but just kind of talk a little bit about culture and politics and shit like that, man. But how you feeling? You like what you feeling? What was your style? I know I've seen you dress. Now I've seen you put some ascots and shit like that. Like that's what I used to wear. So you got your flavor from him?
No, I ain't get it from him, brother.
Where you get it from?
I mean, I got it from my mama, but it's like Detroit, we fly. We get down and stuff, man. So it's just in us to some of us get very super fly, and then some of us get just nice fly. I like to think nice fly.
Nice fly.
Yeah, nice fly. But I mean, it evolves. I mean, 15 years ago, I thought Fly was wearing a fucking nice Dickie outfit, khaki outfit and shit, and some Nike boots or some shit, some Timbos. Depending on your mentality where you at.
Fresh in your Nike boots. So look, man, I know we're gonna be talking about Dapper Dan and Harlem and stuff like that. So I was thinking, man, I was reading again. I'm still sometimes getting into contextualizing Angela Davis by Joy.
How long that been out? That book there?
I feel like she 2024.
Yeah, because Joy, she like just birthing books and shit, man.
Well,
keep up.
Apparently she had it in the arsenal for a while and she published it then. But I think she already kind of had it and updated it. But it made me think about, like, a lot of times we think about historical figures, whether good or bad. And I don't know if we examine like the time period that they were existing in or living in, or shall we say making history in. So it started making me think about so obviously Angela Davis grew up in Birmingham. She was friends with the young ladies who were killed by the Buckers.
Who was bombed?
Who bombed, murdered, right? Condoleezza Rice grew up with her, right? So there's a lot of people that kind of grew up in the era. And so there was a part when it was talking about tracking the rise of the resistance, where even this, so even during 1963, when the murder happened, there were a couple like youth or young people who were kind of raised by communists and some of them more liberal people. But there were people who used to say like, oh, it was Martin Luther King's fault. Like he's an outside agitator and he's the reason why this stuff happened. But like, because I like chronology, like I was seeing when SNCC was founded in 1960, Ella Baker was 57 years old. uh, uh, Angela Brown, not Brown, I'm sorry, Angela Davis was 16, Kwame Ture was 19, John Lewis was 20, H. Rap was 17. And then by the time 1967 happened, when Kwame Ture took over SNCC, he was only like 26. So I like to kind of like grapple with like the context of what was going on. That's probably why I read like several books at a time, and those PDF comes in handy. But I just like to kind of know the context of who was thinking, how people develop. So as you see, even though one claim Angela Davis is the most radical, but like to see her, Condoleezza Rice, and a couple other like notable people grew up in that time. They all had experiences in time, and they kind of like all different. Like I'm curious if when you think about like maybe the people you grew up with, and do you see yourself or do you see others like yourself to have the same type of politics or engage in the same type of lifestyle now? Or would you say like you kind of like stick out a lot of folks that you grew up with?
I mean, that's an interesting question, and probably gonna give an interesting answer. And part of the interesting answer is like looking at my evolution and my growth. I think what we don't keep in mind is that we're influenced by books that we read, or if we continue to read, or literature and just in general. We're also influenced by social dynamics. We're influenced by life-changing dynamics. If you get a new relationship, you have children, a new job, like all these things that's on this continuum that has an impact on us. I remember when I was introduced to the Jimmy and Grace Lee Boggs Center, and Grace Lee Boggs was still alive, and their language was centered around evolution, and it wasn't obviously they still used the word revolution, but it was like evolution. I was like, man, what the fuck is evolution? I'm a revolutionary, I know. And it was watered down to me at that time. Now, where I'm at now, it makes sense. Everything's continuing to evolve, but the way they did it, it just felt like a cop out, so to speak. And I think we get locked into certain things, and we get locked into like certain people for the period that they was. Like, I think that's why we get so hurt when people pass. Certain iconic folks, like did we think they was going to live forever? Like somebody, but also part of that is, well, who's going to fill that void? I mean, I've met Angela once or twice. Nothing too deep. I've heard her speak. I mean, I've heard her speak one time where I just got up and walked out because it was just like, what the fuck is you talking about? I mean, she was criticizing America, but uplifting Obama. Like, how can you uplift Obama and then criticize America? Like, they're in the same boat. They're two of the same dynamic and shit. So it's interesting because when we talk about Angela, we tend to erase George Jackson, the Starlight Brothers, which I don't say gave her a platform. It didn't create her consciousness, but definitely was a platform for Angela, who Angela becomes in an iconic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wonder if this. So even as explaining things, right? So we're gonna get into some of Dapper Dan's story, and maybe this is too broad too. But are there things that you probably explain or analyze or said with your then brain understanding experience that, like, as an adult, as a more radical thinker, you can kind of go back and say this is what was happening then, as opposed to, because like you could justify what you're doing and why you're doing it, but like as you grow, like you like, oh, this is what was happening. I mean, you talked about this in other mentions of like, if there's some wild stuff going on, you won't really know until like years later, like, oh, this is what happened, whatever. So are there things that kind of stick out to you that like your analysis of explaining a situation drastically change, that you can like think of? Again, I know it's very broad, but I wonder if there's something at the top of your mind with that.
Man, you feel like you interviewing me today, brother.
For sure.
Ask questions.
You the doctor, man. What
It was I was part of a podcast show a couple of nights ago, and some of the questions that they was asking me, the way I answered them It was 3 black women, and one of the black women like, damn, you sound like a black feminist. So my answer to that is like I lean more like I am a new African revolutionary nationalist that hold my feet to the ground with a black feminist lens now. Then, and I think I always had to some degree, but it was just continue to evolve, continue to grow, and I definitely use that lens more now. But also, I'm 52 years old. I think I'm a 52 strong, physical, not the most athletic, but use that in the context of life. Like I'm transitioning into that elder state, and part of how to transition into that is what is the wisdom that I can offer? What is the frameworks that I can offer? What is the lessons that I can offer, along with still being active, along with still leading, like, but understanding there's a transition that I'm going through in my life that is important to embrace that transition and engaging others in that transition, because it helps me understand who I am, but also being very vulnerable in who I am and being very honest, authentic. I think some people rock with me based upon that, because I've learned early on it's important to be more flexible. Obviously, I have my ideas, and there's things that I hope I would die on. But when I'm talking to people, I know it's not about me. I'll put my ideas to the side for the sake of the whole. And I think a lot of people get lost in that. That is a value that I hold.
Yeah, about being open and maybe adjustable and
correct.
So yeah, I think one of the things that I remember that when we was in having we was at this event, and I've shared the video before, but with Charlie Cobb and who was with Snick, and there's a couple of them there, and they was talking about how, like, what type of Ella Baker was, and how Ella Baker will allow the young people to kind of speak freely, and anytime they get off of course, what she would do is she would kind of like ask them a question, and by asking them a question, it'll kind of guide them back in there. But she always had like this curiosity. Now, us today know how powerful Ella Baker is and who came from under her leadership or teaching. But like that knowing, but also like the way in which you engage with people is more curious. I feel like people become way more open to you, as opposed to, again, like being the smartest person in the room and being the expert on some shit we ain't never achieved, right? Like we didn't make revolution here yet. I don't even know if any of us even lived in the place that made revolution, and definitely contributed to some orgs or people who've done that. So we all kind of experimenting at this point. But with the way in which we deal with people, sometimes we could come off as experts and super rigid. So,
but I think we are to some degree, and I think your point around Ella, and I mean, I think that's a show, a topic, analysis in itself. Like, and you're helping me realize, which I already knew, but I'm seeing it. Like what the decision that she made was very revolutionary. Because again, when you think about that time period, King, SCLC, they're trying to make those young people which become SNCC the arm of SCLC. And if that happens, the trajectory of history changes dramatically. But it's to your point where Ella, whatever created Ella to be able to have an outer body experience to empower them, to push them. And that's how they was empowered. Like, y'all can follow me, and I think that's about culture. And I think that's about value system, and you see the evolution of SNCC. Mm-hmm. To your point of where they started and where they end up. Like, what doesn't get talked often, like the group that invited Malcolm down to the South, it was SNCC to come down there and speak. His first time going down to the South.
Yeah. So look, man, you're watching Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, and we're gonna shortly take a break and bring our brother up and start the conversation. So make sure you, again, share that link, maybe grab a little drink. Damn, I feel like a freestyler. What's the next bar? What's the next bar?
Say it, sorry again.
Share that link, makes you grab a little drink.
Share that link, make sure you grab a little drink. because we hope we don't sink.
And don't smoke Reggie. Only strong dank. Oh, okay. That's enough.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
Welcome back. Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 7. Got my good brother here, Mikael. I don't want to. I would say Awake. Do I pronounce that right?
Nah, it's Awaka.
Awaka. See,
Yeah.
That's why I
was about to add on to the freestyle too. I was like,
well, go ahead.
Dare to struggle, dare to think. Oh, come on.
see. We bars.
That was all I got though.
Good try, man. But listen, man, we wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit about some of your work. And we appreciate you. And so I guess to start us off, just let us know who you are, what you do, but then what called you into helping Dapper Dan kind of, write his memoir. Like what was that draw you and what did you hope to get out of it?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you both for inviting me in this space. It's a wonderful show, wonderful program, and wonderful education that I always get from y'all. So appreciate it. And I'm an author. I'm a teacher of writing. I got involved in this project kind of in a roundabout way that I'm still not 100% clear how my name got thrown into the ring to do the project, but obviously was familiar with Dapper Dan's work. And I had been, writing essays for various publications, various corporate publications, magazines, and I think it had gotten the attention of some people at Random House who were looking for someone to execute the book because the book had already been sold to the book project had already been sold to the publisher. So when they were looking for someone to finalize the project, you could call it a ghostwriter. I prefer to call it a co-author. Funny fact about ghostwriter, the word for it, what they call it in France, is actually a slur for Black people. And so that just shows you about the kind of exploitative nature of ghostwriting. Just that there's a kind of like, I think we look at it in a different way. Like in the music industry, ghostwriting has a different quality. People can make a good living off of it. And actually in the corporate publishing world, you have career ghostwriters, people who do this for a living, people who write speeches for, heads of state, politicians, CEOs, etc. But I got involved in the project because I was genuinely curious about Dapper Dan. A lot of us have heard his name in music. Wear a G on my chest, I don't need Dapper Dan. The Jay-Z line, So I a series of interviews to kind of vet me. They vetted my writing and everything that I could do the job. And then Dap and his son Jelani hired me, and then Random House approved me, and that's how I got the job.
So real quick, I wanna kind of like, me and Yusef was talking a little bit about like grounding it in like politics and culture and maybe the time period. And what I learned that I didn't know, that Dan had some background in journalism. So if you can kind of like maybe share some of that, or even things interested that you learned, because there was a moment where Dan had opportunity to go to Africa during like the Revolutionary Socialist year. So if you can kind of like share some information about that part, and it'll be dope.
Absolutely. I want to highlight two women in his family who were very creative and very literary. The first of whom was his mother, who wrote poetry that she never showed anybody, kept it in a drawer, and only later did Dap's older sister find that stash of writing. And and I always felt that was really moving, that that, you know, as a writer, to care about words, to care about expression that much. You don't show it to anybody, but you keep it in a drawer. And so that always stuck with me. And you could tell that, you know, his brothers, they all read and they all discussed religion and spirituality as kids. You know, this was a household, and this was a neighborhood, speaking of Harlem, where like culture, learning, black bookstores were on every corner. You know, when I came to Harlem in 1999, it was still like very, very bookish country. You know, you would just walk in the streets and it would just be, you have your CD table, you have your incense and your oils table, you have your kente cloth table, but you had always 2 or 3 book tables on every block, right? Piled high with, you know, a lot of the titles that we discuss in the book as well. So I think it's important to give that context of Dap's relationship to writing and expression through words and involvement in reading. As you know, the something that Dap says throughout the book is, there's no problem I can't read my way out of. And I think that that's something that I really resonated with when I was working on the book. And obviously I highlighted it as like a writer and a book nerd. I was like, oh, we're gonna hit this every chapter. Just make sure that people know. But you know, his journalism, he had a path, and the path really forked when he was in his 20s to get a full scholarship to Columbia School of Journalism through the Urban League. The Urban League had these storefront schools throughout urban neighborhoods like Harlem, and he was kind of kind of persuaded into the school by someone who was just standing out front of the storefront. And I think that in and of itself, I had never heard about the Urban League's like storefront schools. I was like, what happened to that program? But that was the program in 1968 that facilitated Dap's first trip to Africa, which he took with other students around that same age. It was like it was a high school prep program preparing them for college. And it was through that program that he met an English teacher who really liked his writing, and encouraged him towards the journalism path. They also had a student newspaper called 40 Acres and a Mule, which we excerpted the Schomburg in collaboration with the Schomburg Museum. They supplied us with archival copies of 40 Acres and a Mule. So if anybody's interested in that, you can kind of search it online on the Schomburg site and look at 40 Acres and a Mule. I think all of these kind of print publications, this print culture, I think it was important to highlight that, not only for that, but also for me, as we were kind of like collaborating and discussing on what the book would be. So that was his journalism path, and it kind of forked. He had this choice to make between going to Columbia for journalism and going that route. And maybe it would be Daniel Day, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, instead of Dapper Dan, you know, couturier to the hip hop golden age. So that's how it went. And Africa was really the choice that in Dap's own narrative is what shifted everything towards his focus on culture.
So I'm curious to hear your take on how you define culture, good brother, in relationship to Black people in America, keeping in mind what we've been through, and then where we presently day at, and how that has influenced us, and then in relationship to Dapper, the book project, and because the book project that we can get later into, but it's on the timeline of hip hop. That is, people talk about as a culture as well.
Right, that's a great question. Culture, and just to clarify, asking in terms of how do I see culture as it relates to Black people in the United States.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I see it as, personally speaking, it's a culture that is one that, you know, I'm privileged to engage with as an artist, as a writer, through books, through friendship, and through you know, certain family relations. But in terms of my personal journey as a Black person in the United States, my people come from Ethiopia, and they came here in the early 70s. And the culture that we had in our house growing up was very much a kind of, you know, absolutely there was Marvin Gaye that they were listening to. But in terms of what my understanding of culture was, I think it evolved through kind of reading about the Harlem Renaissance when I was young, wanting to kind of understand this moment of where I think Harlem is so important to Black culture and the modern world, period, right? As just this moment of urban modernity, post-Great Migration, interaction across class within Black people, to create kind of, you know, when you think about fashion and jazz and music, it was this very important moment. It didn't only happen in Harlem, it happened in Chicago. And so I think that when I think about culture, say it again.
I said Detroit too.
Don't forget about Detroit. I can't do that to you. So I think that it was through reading and through learning, growing up as a youngster in Atlanta, that I was driven to kind of think about culture as related to where culture arises. If it arises in New York, there's a certain texture to it. If it arises in Chicago, there's a certain texture to it. But it's all, you know, kind of transforming in these geographies, and having the quality of those geographies that's incredibly important. So I don't think, you know, I think people talk about the culture, you hear it spoken about in terms of hip hop, and I'm always kind of confused about what that word is taking up in its net, right? Like, you're doing it for the culture, and it's like, you know, and I'm like, and I don't think, and I think that lack of specificity goes against my understanding, you know, as someone who is Black but not multi-generational African American, about how culture operates. Because obviously, you know, the context I have about the continent and you know, and the East African ancestry that I've had the, you know, privilege of going to Africa, similar to Dap, is seeing that culture is very important. But it's very, like, you can go 50 kilometers from one geography and it's a totally, like, people wear stripes over there vertically and they wear it horizontally over there, and you better not get those two places twisted, right? And so I think there's something, you know, very, very Black, very human about, like, embracing our, like, disparate and different cultures, and that being a source of, like, connection and not division. So that's how I would think about culture. It's just like, you know, it's what people do, it's what people make, and it's tied to geographies, it's tied to place. And there's kind of like this big bang moment in the early 1900s where it's like, you know, Black America becomes like a city folk, and I think that's really what I'm interested in. But I mean, but not to discount, like, the country and the rural culture, and that, which I think is outside the purview of what I'm talking about.
No, thank you for that, man. And actually, I really appreciate, like, that. I could hear the nerd in you, and you like deep thinking, and I really appreciate the answer. And it really, and I asked that to set up in terms of, you know, being offered the opportunity to work on this project, and as you get into the immerse of the project, immerse of the individual, what type of culture did you learn that helped shape Dapper Dan into the icon that he becomes?
You know, I think the most interesting aspect was the multiracial element that gets erased in Harlem history. The fact that there was a moment, not to make it like all kumbaya, but I think that that there was this aspect by which Black people in that neighborhood of Black Central Harlem were drawing influences from, you know, Italians, were drawing, you know, when they weren't rioting and beefing over Ethiopian invasion, there was still like culturally what was important to DAP was drawing from, you know, the way the Irish cats dressed, drawing from the way that the Spanish cats, I'm using his language, not, you know, obviously, you know, maybe the accurate, you know, ethnic identifiers, but the way that the Spanish cats danced, and then also the way certain people from North Carolina differ from Georgia. And so I think it was just understanding. I think one of the most revealing things about this project was seeing that neighborhoods really, you know, really congregated based off of where you were from in the South. So there was like Spartanburg, South Carolina blocks. There was, you know, Georgia blocks, Georgia restaurants. Everybody from Georgia would have the same restaurant. And so, you know, DAP uses that as an example of the kind of community formation that created a sense of safety, that created a sense of familiarity, and that the so-called urban renewal, you know, scooping up people and kind of throwing everybody into project buildings where you didn't know anybody and you didn't know who was your neighbor, that really had a devastating and traumatic effect on, you know, on this sense of, I think we could extend that to culture, like and what kind of a culture that broke and created or destroyed the possibility of a culture. And so that was what really drew me, is that transition from the agrarian to the urban, and how it was navigated, and the direction it could have gone, and the direction that it did go, and how the direction that it did go seemed to only aid in the destruction of Black people and as a kind of collected, unified people.
So two of those neighborhoods in Harlem was the Charleston with Bumpy Johnson, as he talked about, and then there was just the other South Carolina folks. But I know we're getting into that. So there's some highlighted comments that we're going to get to, but I do want you to kind of talk more about like what was happening during that time when Dan was in Harlem, and maybe even if you can get into some of his engagement with the Black Panthers and NOI. You know, I know there was a funny moment when the Black Panthers was talking about a particular thing in one of the meetings he was in, and he was like, "I'm out," and he never came back. but yeah, talk a little bit more about the Black Panthers and the NOI engagement with Dapper Dan.
Yeah, that was a very fascinating brief, like it was a part of a chapter, maybe one paragraph, that we discuss DAP's relationship with the Panthers. I kind of had the sense when talking to him that he had friends who were in it, you know, knew a lot of people in the neighborhood, outgoing, charismatic guy, that you know, he probably went to a meeting or two, and when the topic of the drug trade, which again, I think with Dapper Dan, there's two time periods. There's DAP before he kicked drugs, and then DAP after he kicked drugs. And I think this time period after he kicked drugs and was trying to find his way, trying to politically, and you know, and I think there's a lot of people now who join organizations and they're trying to kind of, you know, see like, is this going to be for me? And I think for DAP, you know, it was a relatable moment. I don't actually know. I've always meant, and maybe someone in the chat knows, like if this is actually, and maybe two of you would know, it's a good question. If this was borne out by like, you know, Panther Party meeting, you know, history that that there was conversation about offing drug dealers in Harlem. If I don't know, I didn't fact check it. You know, a memoir, the good thing about, well, not the good thing, but the time saving thing about a memoir is, you know, it's someone's point of view, and if it's someone's point of view, you can take it up with them. But this was Dap's firsthand account. I didn't do the due diligence of seeing if there were actual conversations around taking out drug dealers. But yeah,
that was a real thing.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it was. And so I think the reaction to that as kind of, you know, this is the end of my involvement with the Panther Party. It was interesting. You know, I don't think that he joined any other organizations after that, even though the teachings and the political alignment might have had some influence over how he saw Black freedom. I think freedom is always important to Dap, and I think awareness of working within the system. Obviously, this is someone who had opportunities, continues to have opportunities to really engage with the corporate structure. And I think he, you know, from the outsider's perspective, but so, you know, someone who knows him rather well, like, I think there's an aversion that he has, a distrust that he has of working with the system. And so, you know, but obviously there are contradictions within that in terms of, you know, having to deal with Geechee and things of that nature. So, yeah, but the Panthers, I mean, since writing the book, I got more interested in New York City Panther history in particular, and the ways in which it did, you know, when you think about Mutulu Shakur and the focus on rehabilitation clinics using acupuncture in order to help people kick heroin. I thought about that as like that there's also that narrative too of, and that history of the Panthers using public health as a political organizational tool, as well as, you know, often some drug dealers. So yeah, so that's kind of my take on it. Yeah.
Updated note: Mutulu Shakur was never part of the Black Panther Party.
He was not?
Nope.
I stand corrected.
So him and Zay Shakur, Lumumba was took Afeni as his wife. They was like adopted brothers. And that's actually how Mutulu gets the name Shakur. And Mutulu, actually, he was part of the Republic of New Africa. And then later, during the time period you're talking about, they all kind of merged, the Black Liberation Army, former Panthers, but they all grew up together. Just wanted to add that context.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It's important.
I didn't know if you used to have, but so.
All right, you go ahead. You can go follow up.
So speaking to that, I think well Dan did have, from what I read, like there was a time when he was like not offing the drug dealers, but he was like, I'm gonna rob the drug dealers, not rob them, but play them in a dice game and take money. I'm gonna exploit them. I'm gonna exploit their ego. And him and even one of his friends, they started like, you know, I guess hustling the drug dealers because they had a whole bunch of money. So you can kind of see the social issue that's happening there. And then Dan's response to it, like maybe like, no, I don't want to do what the Panthers do. And I don't know, this is kind of probably all conflated because it's probably different times, but kind of speak to his idea of like, well, there's money in there, so I can get some money from those drug dealers. And then also later on, maybe developing another product, clothes, designer clothes, and selling it to them too. So I wonder what's your like perception of that, and maybe the environment or the opportunity that maybe that you might think Dan saw in that, and yeah, how it relates to like the environment or the moment.
Yeah, you know, I think Dap's story, like so many, is about trying to make a way out of no way, and he tries so many different hustles. You know, you read the book and it's like he tries the paper game. You know, when credit cards first come out, you know, he tries, eventually lands on dice as a way to just take money using statistics and probability from, you know, Nicky Barnes's crew, Frank Lucas's crew, young people who were making tons of money, and I think just robbing from those who were exploiting the vulnerabilities in the neighborhood and in the community. And so I think it was a principled stance. He kind of wrote his own rules in terms of spiritually, how does he stay whole while still trying to make a way out of no way. And I think the dice game is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very unstable. There are moments throughout the book and moments speaking where he recounts, other people dying over dice games, and him being very close to dying, but still being aware enough to understand that he got to leave a situation when it got too hot. And so I think that and some run-ins with the authorities while he was running the paper game got him to start thinking about how to maybe transition into becoming a designer clothes retailer. And at first he was just selling furs, but then, and making connections within the fur game in New York, which obviously New York is central to you have the garment district, you have Fashion Row, you have Fashion Week, and you have, a lot of media and industry that's located in New York. So I think that those networks he started to really develop as he built his business. And then he just started, upcharging, overcharging the dealers, and the fact, and the dealers were the ones that had the money. They had the pretty women, and I think that that was what eventually drew the rappers and the musicians and the athletes into, dressing like the hustlers, dressing like the people coming out of Dapper Dan's boutique. And so, because no one else could afford a Dapper Dan, and he had layaway programs and everything. And his shop was running 24/7. Mike Tyson and Mitch Green got into it outside his shop. Mike knocked him out because Mitch was kind of on something at that night, and he kept it running 24/7 because he had about a dozen West African tailors working in a factory in Harlem that he also controlled. So it was a big operation, and he met a lot of those West African tailors from his second trip to Africa, which was very different than the first trip. So it's like, a tale of two trips to Africa. The first one was kind of like connecting with roots, and around the time of starting to really learn his spiritual ancestral identity. And then the second one was everybody's going to be in Zaire to see Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, including, James Brown and all different kinds of Black celebrities. And it was just a place to be in 1972. So he went for that. He didn't get to see the fight, but that's where he started meeting all these Francophone, former colonized African countries and the tailors there. And that's the link. And right now in Harlem, like there's a heavy West African community. The rapper Sheck West, this is one of my favorite tidbits, is trivia from the book. The rapper Sheck West's father was one of Dapper Dan's tailors. So, so yeah, I think that's kind of, he found an ethic. He found within himself a code of how how he could justify making a living off of the drug trade, even though he had no participation in it, and even though he was targeted and eventually ultimately brought down not by the DEA, who then, it seems clear that the DEA thought he was doing dirt in the drug game, and surveilled everybody who was coming in and out of his shop. But then somehow kind of it became clear to them that it wasn't what it actually was this boutique. And then it escalated up to being a copyright intellectual property case against Dapper Dan that ultimately shut down his operation. And you know, the thing to think about with that is, if they wanted to get him, they wanted to get him and they got him. Like, it wasn't a question of whether they should have. It was just they had the authorities set their sights on him and took everything. And it's a very spurious case as well too, because he was making things that Geechee and Louis Vuitton did not have. You know, he was making designs and they accused him of bootlegging, but he was actually making something completely new with those logos and with those patterns. And so anyway, and I think it also brought a lot of attention to him that was from the other, you know, members of the community. Could have been, you know, he was targeted by someone, shot in the face, and a bullet, I think, still lodged in his neck right outside his shop. And so, you know, it eventually caught him. But that's kind of my take from my perspective. But it's an interesting contradiction that he, I think, found peace with for himself.
So, and listen to you talk and answering Geechee question, a lot of thoughts just was going through my head and ahas, right? One aha, in particular around time periods, is Dapper Dan. The merger of Dapper Dan is also around the phenomenon, is in the phenomenon of the heroin trade that's going on. That's very strong, or maybe at the tail end. There's the phenomenon of hip hop that's emerging. He's in the middle of these different phenomena, and also there's this human experience just out there. Guy, you said use drugs, post drug, and it sounds like it's shaping him. And then this is my take, and listening and how he comes into the clothing business. It feels like this is a new drug, so to speak, that he creates. He has a clientele. Is that an appropriate way to kind of, and when you put in the time period and how to describe that?
Absolutely. I'd never thought about it in that term and in that framing, but I think it's dead on. You know, we see consumer culture, we see the addiction of, you know, and how kind of like the internet and online shopping has fueled that kind of and social media with the ads on Instagram as an ad machine, right? Like our phones are now basically ad machines. How that has fueled the drug that Dap created in his laboratory, right? And and so I think that's when you talk about the time period, you know, and replacing one addiction for another. The only difference, obviously, when you see how Black culture, hip hop culture has become really the vehicle for the fashion industry. You know, Pharrell at the head of Louis Vuitton and Virgil before him, and you see that that absolutely it was commandeered, and it was you know, and Geechee made a deal with them because that was you know, absolutely the thing that it's undeniable that Dap kind of brought to hip hop. So, and others. I mean, it's not just Dap. I think it was just that moment that you know, Dr. Yusef is you were mentioning. There's so many things. There's so many thoughts. Now you got my mind kind of like cycling. So I appreciate that.
So I actually had like somewhat expectations for the conversation, and it did what I wanted it to do and exceed. But it like really makes me want to have like even more conversations which we're gonna probably have to have one-on-one when I call you as opposed to online. But like the Kanye shit now, like I'm even curious how you felt about Kanye and his deals and the clothing as it relates to Dapper Dan and whatever. But I want to end here with two of Leah's questions. The first one was, can the author describe this discovery of material for the book, how he found archival material? And then the last question is, there's a labor component. Does the book explore that? And I know you talked about those people having those, I don't know, a sweatshop, but anyway, yeah. Those two questions.
You said it. I didn't say it. The first part is that because, you know, folks at the Schomburg are interested in Dapper Dan's story and his archives, you know, his sketchbooks and all of that. The Schomburg was very generous in terms of supplying and finding the archival material, and you know, there are curators at the Schomburg, librarians at the Schomburg who are all around the neighborhood, and I actually think he ran into Barry Brown, who's a curator at the Schomburg, who became a good friend of Dap and his family, and that's how I met Barry, and she really was instrumental in getting some of those archival materials. So Schomburg was really important in terms of that. But I also think Dap's personal archive, he keeps a lot of stuff on hand as well. So that's important. And then the labor component, we don't really explore the labor component, although there's a funny moment where Dap basically talks about his workers kind of not forming a formal union, but they definitely do assemble and pressure him about certain working conditions and work environments, and Dap fired everybody.
It's like Tyler Perry.
So Dap fired everybody, but then he brought him back the next day after they had kind of agreed, to some kind of compromise. I don't know if it was favorable to the West African workers, but yeah.
Damn, Dap don't like organizers.
I mean, he might have changed since then, but yeah, he did have Sheck West's father and them, working day and night because that's what people wanted, and they were making money. So
damn. My brother Mikael, like I said, we're gonna finish this conversation, and y'all ain't gonna get to watch it or listen to it.
Why not? Let the people hear. If they want to hear, I'll come back.
Yeah, for sure, man. We appreciate you both. Anything you got coming up you want to alarm us to? You're working on a book, and I didn't want to say it, but
yeah, absolutely. I'm working on a book that should be out summer 26, but there's going to be a book that I helped kind of shepherd into the world. And this is independently published by a press that, I'm trying to get off the ground. I am getting off the ground. And so, I think it's important that we have independent channels for cultural production and culture work. And so this is a book that I frankly hope is more successful than my own book for various reasons, it just finds its readers. That's what I mean by success. And it's a memoir of one of the co-founders of Rucker Park, the namers of Rucker Park, Bob McCullough, co-authored by Alexander Petrie. And I think it's a beautiful book. It's really kind of more of a young adult focus, short, 200 pages, for the teens and the early 20s, to give them a sense of basketball history. We want the Hoopers to read this, and some exciting kind of collaborations for the cover design and everything. So really excited about that. It's called Each One Teach One, A Street Ball Life. And it's going to be independently published. And then my book's coming out the year after that. We're going to have, hopefully like doing some things around summer, because that's the time, in New York and other places where the playgrounds start popping. So yeah.
Well, when you finish that, we can't have Yusef on because he don't look like he know anything about basketball. So
man, what?
Look at
that. Come on, that's wet. That's wet.
Oh, real before you go, you dropped yours real like like it wasn't nothing. You ain't got to get into too deep, but your book is a memoir. Is it essays?
I appreciate you asking. It's kind of a history of Rucker Park.
Okay.
It's a so basically, as I was researching this book and doing interviews, I met Bob, and I started recording, and Bob really wanted to tell his story, and so I was just like, I can't fit it all into this history that encompasses and one mixtapes and Skip to My Lou and Jim Jones and Cameron and everybody, but I think that there's a way that we could collaborate, and kind of get another book into the world. So my book is more of a kind of counter narrative to basketball history. It's called Playground Moves. It's got a little bit of me in there. It's got a little bit of the process of researching the book as well. So it's a little bit of a lot of reporting, a good deal of archival research and cultural criticism as well. But really a history of the playground at 155th and 8th Avenue in Harlem, as well as the city of New York, as well as street basketball, and how it really began as an educational program. Holcomb Rucker, Coach Rucker, and Lorraine Younger, two community workers in Harlem who were focused on youth, trying to find a way to keep kids occupied, keep them engaged in education and in productive activities while their families, while their caretakers were busy, doing what the proletariat do. And so I think that was really what kind of, I wanted to focus on all those dimensions and really give a fuller, zoomed out view of what is street basketball, how did it develop, and what does it say about the kind of political economy of America in this particular moment. So there's a lot to say. I could keep writing it, but I got to give it up at some point. So,
so I did have one more question. You talked about this independent publishing thing. Your book, will it follow that same route, or will you follow a different process?
No, it's going to be published with one of what they call the Big Five publishers. In this case, Penguin Random House, Corporate Press. And so I think I know that when Geechee and I were talking about those kind of contradictions of working with the corporate press and what's possible in those spaces with respect to I know that there was conversation around the Super Bowl and all that, but did my video go out? Okay.
No,
you good.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was talking to the
Let's get you fucking up, man.
That's okay. So it's kind of navigating that contradiction of like, how much am I able to do? How much am I able to educate? Versus like obviously remembering that this is a vehicle at the end of the day for entertainment, but trying to educate at the same time. And I think with books, it's just like there's so much space to get your shit off, for lack of a better word. Yep. Yeah. So, but I have no illusions about who it's gonna enrich, and I think the complications of that will hopefully be articulated, expressed, and in the book itself.
No, thanks for sharing. And I'm asking from a personal. I've written a couple books, self-published, and I'm working on my next book. And I'm more and more interested in going the other route. It's going to be called Dear Ava Joe. The person is political. It's letters to my mother.
That's what's up. Yeah. And how and so that's going to be a memoir?
Yes.
Through letters, like an epistolary memoir?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's really me, and it won't be like going back into my lived experience, but taking points out of my lived experience. Come out of gangs, prison, that type of dynamic, and writing back to, and also a lot of times it get missed in these conversations. A lot of us grow up in this era of single mothers,
right?
and we look at it as a deficit. But as most of us know, they was the ones always there, loving us, protecting us. And writing back to my mother and talking about, despite your love, your protection, this is what I went through, but I came out on the other side because of you, and I'm sorry. It's kind of like Pac's Dear Mama, but
Dear
in
Mama,
this book form.
In book form, that's very cool. I haven't heard of like that format before used, and what you're saying about it. There's so many possibilities. So you finished the book already?
No, it was my dissertation.
Okay.
And I'm flipping it over, so I just finished writing my first chapter to it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Best of luck, and let's keep in touch for sure.
Yeah.
That sounds beautiful.
Thank you.
Listen, man, we appreciate you. We got our comrade from the LA chapter coming up next, Mikael. Give him a round of applause. Appreciate you. Yep.
Appreciate y'all.
You as well, Black man.
I'll see you soon. Keep doing
All right.
And maybe you can help him write his book. And if you charge him, you can just give me a percentage and we cut it all good.
Yeah, no, we're gonna keep talking about that for sure.
All right, peace.
All right, y'all. Peace.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot of. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
Back at it. You see it. You bob into the skip coon. Yo, so what's up, man? Like, we are back. And you yelling at your dog while we coming back. But we back at Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 7, and we got up here Michael. I'm saying that right? Come off mute. You on mute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. From the LA chapter, man. How you feeling? What's going on with you?
Feeling good. Actually, I'm not feeling good. I was working out this morning with a homie. We were running our little 5K, and then I was stretching, started doing some jumps, slipped, and now my whole right leg is, you can't see it right now, but it's propped up. So I'm chilling. The rest of the day just got wiped out. So I'm okay, but I'm all good.
Is it like bad, or is it like need to chill out for a while?
I just think I need to chill out for a couple of days. Yeah. So
kind of like a sprain or something.
Yeah, probably just some ice will do it. So, but didn't expect that to happen at all. Yeah, but I stick to a routine of flexibility and stretching, so that allows injuries to go by pretty quickly. So I trust my body, trust the process.
Yeah,
so
we hope you heal up, get good very soon. So we wanted to come on and bring you on and talk about like some of the work y'all doing in LA. I know it's a fairly new chapter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell us about how you came into maybe CMB and like in the LA chapter.
Yeah, I came into CMB. They were doing their political education at the time, back when they were in the old building, the Harriet Tubman building on Pico. If you're familiar with Los Angeles, you know Pico. And I came in and they were killing it with the analysis in terms of, we were reading Wretched of the Earth, and I was like, cool, I'm down with these folks. They were a little younger than me, and I was just like, cool. I was not in CMB yet. I was just coming back, and I was just following on the Instagram and things like that. But getting into things that we do, a lot of the times, a lot of what we do is the food distributions. That's like our biggest program that we have in Skid Row. If anyone's familiar with Los Angeles, you're familiar with Skid Row. Just terrible housing situation and the manifestation of a lot of terrible policy. So what we're doing is we pack, before we would do it all in one day, we would pack the food and give away the food, but the heat was just crazy. And we had to divide it up. And so now we do a day where we pack the hygiene kits, the food, the breakfasts, the toiletries and all of that, reproductive products. And then the next day, I think every third, I don't want to misspeak, every third Saturday and Sunday, that's when we do the packing. And then Sunday we go into Skid Row and we just start handing things out. But yeah, no, shout out to the leader of CMB. I'm not the leader, our lead programmer, but they really have a good way about creating connections with the community down in Skid Row and figuring out which families need the most help and how to build consistency with certain families. And we have members who like go the extra mile and make sure people get to the hospital, people they just met, if we can, and get the services that they need beyond just the food giveaways and everything like that. So that's one of the things.
So I'm curious. So I've been in LA a couple times, and every time I came, I don't think I liked it. Only because I felt like I was around a bunch of everybody who wanted to be actresses and actors, and it was like a lot of. And maybe I was in the wrong spot. Then I did spend some time in Skid Row with General Dogon and another person I know. But what is it like? What's the so when you said you went into this event and they was kicking an analysis, like what is that radical organizing like in LA?
It's not that radical. It's not that radical. Just to be quite honest with you, CMB is different. But and I can only speak for myself. I don't want to speak. I don't even want to speak for CMB. But this is just as an LA resident. It is the organizing here is issue based. It tends to be, nonprofits focusing on one thing or the other without going as far as to say, this is a product of capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism. And that is something that we're trying to work on, different people that I know, trying to work on in terms of building that greater analysis within these orgs. There are individual people within the orgs who probably have that analysis or maybe don't, but where it seems like there's a larger push, especially with Trump coming in, to create some sort of coalition and come to some sort of ideological consensus, as hard as that may be. And we'll see how that goes moving forward. But yeah.
Can you talk about how you developed your political analysis, your political consciousness that put you in a position to want to get involved with your local the local chapter CMB, and how is you infusing that within the collective of your organizing?
Yeah, didn't expect to talk about myself at all right now, but it's okay. I came to LA to go to UCLA actually, so I'm a PhD candidate right now. I study the history of Black education. People like Sharice and Layla, they've helped me out, and that's the work that I study. I study ideology and pedagogy, and so just came in to do a very academic thing, and in that became grounded with a lot of the work here in Los Angeles. Started working with No Name Book Club. How's the audio? Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah, so started working with No Name Book Club and doing those political educations, doing teachings there, working the poetry scene here in Los Angeles. So by the time CMB was putting out their call for just coming in to do the political education, I was already in like a teaching book club sort of environment. And when you're doing a PhD, the dissertation, you don't really have to be in class that much. So I use that to just get into the activist spaces and organizing spaces as much as I could in Los Angeles. Definitely part of the Southern California Black Panther Breakfast Forum that we have at Simply Wholesome off Slauson. And that happens separate from CMB, but it's a lot of CMB folks and people like Black Men Build LA. They're also a part of that as well. Just talking with the former Panthers, not former Panthers, they're still Panthers. Building with them.
The breakfast they do every month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Harold Welton,
Harold, yeah,
Harold Taylor,
and Harold Taylor. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So tapping in with them, helping to organize those breakfasts and just setting the themes for every month and stuff like that whenever I have the capacity. So that's already what I was doing when I bumped into Nicole and the crew. And I was just like, wow. And then it turned out, maybe I shouldn't say too much about our identities or what have you, but yeah, it turns out we were already in similar spaces. Yeah, so that's how I came in. Ideologically, personally, Lupe Fiasco was a big influence for me. And then reading just a lot. No Name Book Club was very important to my ideological formation. But before that, I was already studying ideology. I was already studying the 40s. I was already reading Gerald Horne and trying to figure out this Black radical tradition. Prior to that, back in like the undergrad years, I was trying to mix. I was like, what I'm hearing from the Ta-Nehisi Coates of the world is not a lot aligning with what I'm hearing from the Robin Kellys of the world, in terms of there's this push to align ourselves with the project of America, and then there's this other push, and I wasn't. One was more satisfying to me, and that's where I decided to put my efforts in terms of my studies, and hopefully I could put a book out about these radical educators that were teaching, Black radical educators who were teaching in the Communist Party during the 40s and stuff like that. But that's me. CMB definitely seems to be in alignment with those politics, and I've been following Black liberation media for a minute. So that's how I came into things.
So I think it's a great thing, and I kind of want to, I guess, finish more about you, I guess your experience, and then maybe get into some campaigns. But like I've always find it fascinating for people who can be in the academy, but also like be in organization and doing work in community to kind of tie the connection between that. So I would love to hear your experience, especially out there, right? You know, being in the academy, but also in organization. And then I know you talk about the food distro. Like, are there, like, what is kind of the main campaigns out there that y'all working on? And then what are some things that maybe you even hope to do in terms of the spaces that you're in?
Yeah, so right now we're housed out of the Legacy Library, so that's like our headquarters, and that came from brother. I don't want to mess up his name, Kwame. Let me get his name right. Kwasi Nkrumah, actually. So he left behind this huge radical library of books. It's beautiful in there, and we share the space with Black Lantern LA and BAP LA. So it's that coalition is the Legacy Library, and that's where we run out of. And that's a recently acquired space from what I understand as a member. And but CMB runs and funds that space, and it's right there in Hyde Park, which is right off Slauson and in the middle of everything in Black LA. So that's there. As far as the campaigns, so we have the food distro, we have the political, like you said, we're new. So we have the political education, which I've been tapped to really flesh out. So we'll be doing like 2 teachings a month. We just had a teaching on, you know, I told you what I studied. So that's what we was talking about. Sort of the history of Black education and how education has been used as a tool of, you know, internal colonialism, and trying to flesh those things out with our community here. We're trying to figure out, how do you bridge sort of like the Panthers, the survival programs with the political education? How do we do that? So that's going to be a point of constant conversation. How do we just not give out food? Right now, it's sort of like in the food packets, there's a you know, a whole CMB card that lets you know where we are and what the programs are for the month. But other than that, I have some things that I do want to tell you that we're doing. So upcoming, we have a medical program, some somatic therapy, legal support that we're trying to work through. And yeah, I just told you about the new space. So those are some things that we're probably headed towards in the near future, probably within the year, hopefully. And it seems like CMBLA is very close. I'm learning as a member right now how close CMBLA is tied to the Sacramento chapter, and Sacramento chapter. It seems that we kind of birthed CMBLA. I just met a bunch of the Sacramento people, so shout out to them. And we met at this Panther fundraiser a couple nights ago. Actually, it was called the Night with the Panthers. I was doing some poetry there, but also, you know, just talking with Harold and the crew. And it was a fundraiser to, literally, the name says it, fund Panthers as they, you know, reach that point in their lives where they need medical help or other things. And they may not be able to get that same level of social security for being a revolutionary or what have you. So I met a lot of the CMB SAC there, and I was very impressed by their programming. And I think we're kind of trying to lean on each other in the near future. So
yeah, I think that's dope. And there's and I'll let Yusef go one more question before we wrap. but there's seeming to be, like, as we're fleshing out the work that we're doing, there is a push to make sure that we're not just like having programs that don't lead to like more political change. And so I may be curious, as you, and I've asked this question a couple of times to people in the chapter, but like, how do you, from your background and experience, see mutual aid, like maybe the objective, or like how do you see mutual aid?
Yeah, I guess I didn't answer your question about being in the academia. Just a quick note. What I always tell people is just, you know, if I have students or what have you, it's just like, especially when I'm talking to Black students, I'm just like, why are you here? How is it that you came here? And, you know, try to take them away from the understanding, well, I had good test scores in high school and all that stuff. But it's just like, no, you're here because people fought for you to be here, right? People protested, people held sit-ins, people died for Black studies. And because of Black studies, because of the Black studies movement, and because of the Black Power movement, these institutions created some level of compromise for you to be here. And if you are here, you have an obligation to take a Black studies course wherever you get into. And Bunchy Carter and John Huggins literally died were assassinated on UCLA's campus, and that was definitely, the federal government was a part of that. So you have there's a direct legacy here of that movement, but also, you know, you're going to have a more robust understanding of your time here and your purpose after you leave here if you engage that history and, you know, what it means for you today. A lot of Black students are not trying to hear all of that, but I try to put it in a way where it's approachable. Sorry. Mutual aid, just survival programs, survival pending revolution. That's all it is. And you can't have a revolution, I don't think, without people understanding ideology and having a sense of political education, that have ideology, political education, and also mutual aid. It has to be mutual. So people who are receiving have to be able to partake in the giving. Right now, I don't think we're doing mutual aid. Right now, again, not even speaking for CMB, this is just me. But I think what we're doing is charity for the most part, in the sense that people aren't able to get food themselves and start handing out food to everybody else in Skid Row, right? That would be mutual aid. It's going back and forth. But I think we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Thank you.
So I just have one last quick question, good brother. You talked about you guys being issue driven. So curious, I've been to LA a few times. I've never lived there. But in relationship to the issue, is there the issue around violence, gangs? Where does that fall within the continuum of the work that you guys doing and engaging that level of dynamic there?
In terms of our direct, programs, I don't think there's anything directly speaking to the issue of, like, intra-communal violence right now. I think it's more so in the analysis of just like understanding internal colonialism and the need for community control of security. But I want to be clear, CMB is not issue based. The organizational atmosphere around Los Angeles they take an issue based approach.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So we have a fully global and local understanding of what's happening here. But in terms of what we're up against and what similar radical orgs are up against, you have a lot of liberal issue-based approaches to, maybe it's gang violence, maybe it's housing, maybe it's education, right? And we're trying to create an analysis where all of these things are linked, especially now under the context of the fires. There's a big push to help the houseless community, but the houseless community was already houseless before the fires, before the Eaton fires and before the Palisades fires. And we're hopefully able to take this energy of people thinking about people being displaced and houseless and sustain it, and think about the people who've been houseless already. And CMB has already been, I think, for a good year now, we've been there every single weekend. every single month. Let me not do much, but hopefully we can grow and do more while we educate people that this is not just, you can't just tackle one branch. You have to get to the root.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man. Anything y'all got coming up that you want to invite people to or tell people about in LA?
Yeah, if you're in the LA area, come through to the Legacy Library. You can follow us at CNBLA. That's every, I want to say, third Saturday. If I'm incorrect, the Instagram will correct me. But every third Saturday, we're doing the packing, and then Sunday, we're doing the distribution. We could use your help. We could definitely use more hands, and any donations would be great to drop off at the Legacy Library. Not medical kits, hygiene packs, definitely food, and all those other things. And yeah, we're doing look out for the teach-ins that we're doing every single month. That for now I will be facilitating, and yeah, we're really just trying to push a gender analysis as well, that is not focused on the that doesn't trap itself into the binary thinking of gender, and really trying to push CNB LA to have a more expansive understanding of gender and weave that into how we move. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Comrade Michael, appreciate you for coming through. Thanks for stopping in. And obviously you're welcome back anytime. So if there's any articles, anything that you publish, please share with us. We'll love to deal with it with you. So we'll see you soon, man. Appreciate you.
All right. Peace out, y'all. Y'all have a good one.
All right, peace. So brother, we 7 down in the hole, ready to go. How you feel about that?
Feel good, man. You see my dogs, they were trying to get in with us, man. So
what they was talking about, bro?
Man,
they must be selling drugs up there in Detroit. It's like Dapper Dan, Dapper Dan ain't got shit on me.
Yeah, I actually, man, that conversation went a lot better than I thought, man. That name is so entrenched in our minds, in particular as it relates to hip hop, and we've seen it, not even knowing what we were seeing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody want to see the puffs.
Yeah.
Come here, Shanti. Come here. Yeah, it was a powerful, moving conversation and stuff, man.
Yeah.
Come here.
Got he pretty big. What kind of dog is that? There's 2 of them. Goodness gracious, is that a massive? Bro, that dog's too big, bro. That dog's too bigger than you. What kind of dog is that?
Cane Corsos.
Oh, they look like a massive, man.
Who?
Too big for
what?
me, bro. What is the massive? What do you call them dogs?
Bull Masters.
Yeah, man.
So they cousins. They cousins to them.
That look like his cousin. And look, but yeah, I think for me too, the conversation around it made me, like Leo said, I did want to get into the labor context, but what I wanted to ask him, especially in the camera at least, to kind of take his reflections from different people's engagement with capitalism, how Dapper Dan might have done the entrepreneurial thing, but what type of analysis him as an organizer, because he's an organizer. That was actually my roommate when I went to Cuba a couple months ago.
Okay.
And kind of see how he would present Dapper Dan and how people should engage Dapper Dan. Being somebody who helped him write a memoir, being somebody who's political, and being somebody who's seen things over the years. And then obviously I also wanted to hear what he would think about Kanye's argument around being a designer and whatever, and how it might relate to, Dapper Dan, because he said eventually they was going to take him down in some type of way, right? They came for one thing and it switched to something else. And then people probably argue that, they try to take Kanye down. So it'll be dope to kind of hear his reception, reflections on that. So yeah.
I'm always reminded of what one of my professors said when I was in class, which is we can study history, and studying history, we have to be careful of trying to go back and change history, change the narrative history and things. And so in that process, we tend to want to project our analysis instead of engaging the analysis to allow our analysis to emerge. And so that's when like this was, because again, this Dapper Dan is in our lifetime. I mean, especially my lifetime. I'm on the train of hip hop, right? And so in our conversation that we had before we came on the air, time periods, context, dynamics, how they're in relationship to each other, how they're speaking to each other. It was, and you heard those things if you knew, like again when he mentioned what was the drug dealers, the big drug dealers, the one turned to a snitch. Frank Lucas,
Bumpy Johnson.
Yeah, all that, and then hip hop, right? And it's all influencing, it's all happening, and then that's what it made me like shit. Like he learned from that, so he was able to get on. Like the brother said, now that was his goal. He got on. Shit, he's selling clothes, and not only he's selling clothes to the because in Detroit, it was a basketball player named Derek Coleman. He bought some property.
Yeah, I know Derek.
And they opened up, I don't know if he did or someone else, but they opened up a shoe store and they were selling shoes, and the shoes was all expensive ass shoes. And it's in the poor area, so that's obvious. Poor people ain't about to buy these goddamn shoes. All the dope boys gonna buy the shoes. It just never, because again, this ain't the 80s. Dope ain't being sold and galvanizing in that way like it was in the 80s, where I think Dapper Dan, even as dope selling began to fade, hip hop emerges. Hip hop becomes his new clientele as well. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think even that line about like Dapper Dan getting in at the right moment and being able to pretty much be the father of hip hop aesthetics or culture or style. By I guess even I don't know. I wonder if because the line about like him saying like, yo, because what they talked about was him. He was like a really good gambler where he kind of bet people and forced them to kind of focus on their ego, and he tricked them by using their ego. And then there was another person who did the same thing, and they were able to like get a bunch of money, right? And it actually remind me of so there's a card trick that I know. I guess I'm gonna break it to y'all right now. But you take the deck of cards and you shuffle the cards, right? And I say you pick a card. Once you pick a card, you look at the card the whole time. I split the deck in half and I tell you to pick the card back. Once you put the card back, I can see it because I'm at the top of it. I close it back and I give it to you and I say shuffle it. You start shuffling it, right? While you shuffling it, you're building up your ego, right? And then when I get it back, I'm gonna break the card. I'm gonna break it in half again. I'm gonna start counting, and you're gonna see me counting. You was like, oh, he's counting the cards, but really I'm counting, looking for the card. And then once I find the card, I might start doing some all wavy shit and doing this, and I'll be like, I say one time it's like I'm gonna put the cards up in your face, and the way you look gonna tell me what card it is. I do the first one, second one, and then I'm like, this your card. You be like, oh, but the whole time like I'm playing off your ego, and I'm also playing off a misdirection. So he was talking about how like he's very skillful, and then he met another dude who was also very skillful, and together they started hitting all the gambling spots because they know the dope boys just got a whole bunch of money. And then, but so now when you come to the close thing, it's kind of like maybe I don't know if Jay-Z. I guess Jay-Z did talk a little bit about Dapper Dan, but like what he did was it seemed like more I guess ownership foundational than what Jay-Z did. Right, like he kind of, although he got in trouble with Geechee and all that other shit, but I mean, I think it's a dope larger conversation, and especially, I'm thinking about Lester Spence Can't Knock the Hustle book, where this hustle culture gotta die, bro. Like we gotta I mean, maybe we hustle and do some other shit, but the hustle and entrepreneurial spirit, that ain't it. Right. And I think you get a lot of times people being like, well, they don't teach entrepreneurship in school. And so they start to begin to teaching kids entrepreneurship. And that's not even right either. So it's almost like this would be a good story to kind of like talk around like this whole hustle culture and trying to get it how you live. Like he done made all those businesses. He did all that thing. And he's still in, when the state that they wanted, they're going to come get it.
Yeah. I mean, part of that is chasing the American dream.
Yeah.
Chasing the part of hustle culture is to be a millionaire, to be a billionaire. I remember hearing Khalid Twali talk about I would not want to be a billionaire and things, but it's like contradictory to your lyrics and stuff, but it's also part of like any hip hop artist is chasing the mainstream dream. Anybody in America to some degree, because it's part of the culture, but we don't realize when we embrace that culture, we embrace the mentality of an individual. That means like the pimp. And what a pimp would do, a pimp would sell his own heart to make $1.
It was rough cook. So man, what you got coming up, man?
Oh man, just get ready. I think next week, man, conversation gonna be lit. Got the good brother Conrad Quasi. Actually gonna frame it from a standpoint, being inside. When I say inside prison, he and some other brothers led and started what was called the FN, the Freedom Network, which was a newspaper inside the prison, which led to it was already somewhat semi-conscious, but it was a tool to build conscience, a tool to build organizing, and then use that as a token to be able to get deeper into different ideologies. So I'm definitely looking forward to that conversation next week, man. So that will be episode 8 around these.
Yeah, eight in there, and then I think the following week we will bring Jared on to have a more broader conversation around the Vernon philosophy. We might rehash some of y'all conversation about their
Yeah, man. Might some fire. Me and Jared get fireworks sometimes, man. So I'm looking forward to it. Tell Jared I'm looking forward to it.
Here we go. We're gonna be we got it popping. We got it popping. Also, man, if y'all
hold on one quick. Hey, so when Jared last time me and Jared talked, he was just the doctor. So now I'm the doctor too. So we gonna
two doctor niggas are arguing at each other. But also if there's anybody with some dope books, dope written work, literary, anything, like if they you want to see them interview on the platform, shoot one of us an email or a text and we'll definitely bring them through. But until then, I'm gonna keep ducking behind the project building. Y'all don't know that song. Hot Boys are back together, man.
Oh, they is? I never listened to him. So
Birdman falling asleep on stage and shit.
Oh shit. He
ain't
kissing Lil Wayne no more, is he?
I don't know, but I was mad that he took Tony Braxton from me. I was ready to fight that mother.
Straight up. Sad little note, man. Me and his birthday the same day.
Oh, the Birdman? Rub with the Birdman?
Yeah, that's crazy. Right.
That dude whack, man. Anyway, catch y'all next time. Appreciate y'all. See y'all.
That'll struggle, that'll win. Peace.